Well, good morning, Church on the Move. Man, can I tell you guys just how much I'm missing you today? Like, this has been no fun whatsoever, and I know you're probably in the same boat. I know the season's been stressful. I know it's been nerve-wracking. It's been difficult. It's just not been any fun, has it? Like, this is not how we want things to be, but guys, we're going to get through this. I know that. We're gonna see the other side of this at some point, and when we do, I am so looking forward just to having our big family back in the same place together again. But until that time, from the outset, guys, let me just say, if you need something during this time, if you're going through a hardship, if you've got some things that you're lacking, please let us know. Like during this season, I'm going to be in the office as often as I can, and I'm going to have my cell phone on me. I'm going to be by my email. You can reach out to me at any point and let me know, hey, maybe right now you need somebody to go shopping for you. Maybe you've got supply issues or you've got some other need that we don't know about. Guys, listen, we've got volunteers who are wanting to make a connection and serve the needs of the church. So let us know. Guys, we can't help if we don't know. And so please let us know how we can help. Again, you can email me directly. You can call me at any point. And I'd love to make that a reality in your life. Okay? So guys, I'm curious. Did anybody else notice that spring has arrived? It did, yeah. I mean, officially March 19th was the start of spring here for us. And with it came all of the pollen. Right? So much pollen. I don't know if you guys had this experience, but the past 2 weeks, my car has been painted in this yellow pollen dust just everywhere. And naturally, with pollen comes allergy season, right? Pretty much in Florida, allergy season is all the time, but I think this time of year it just gets a lot worse. And guys, if you struggle with allergies, this can be really awkward right now, right? Like watery eyes, coughing, sneezing, these are big no-nos in this day and age, right? And so we went to McDonald's this past week. We were picking up a Happy Meal for my daughter, Katie, and we were going through the drive-thru. And as I'm waiting for the drive-thru lady to hand the box to me, I felt a sneeze coming on. And I'm like, oh, no, this is going to be bad. This is going to be so bad. I felt the sneeze. I'm trying to hold it in. The lady hands me the box through the window, and as I'm saying thank you, achoo! You would have thought that I had killed that lady, that I had given her the sentence of death. She gave me a stare of death, like eye daggers straight at my heart. Like you would have thought that I had physically attacked this woman, because in the season that we're in, if you sneeze, if you cough, well, you must be infected. All right? And everyone's going to hate you if you let, no, guys, seriously, guys, come on. I've got allergies. Please don't lock me up. Come on. It's just allergies. But that's kind of the season we're in. Like, nobody wants to be the one that's, coughing in the storm. That's the season. And we talk about seasons. Have you noticed that our life kind of moves in seasons? It moves in this rhythm. It flows in seasons. Much like the calendar in some states that are north of us. Maybe you've heard about these things called seasons. I know I've seen pictures, I've seen videos. There are these different seasons. And some of you're lucky. You've experienced these things, right? Like summer is when we run and play in the heat of the day. School's out, vacations and fun with family and friends, backyard barbecues, swimming at the beach. But then summer gives way to fall, and the leaves start changing colors, and they start falling as temperatures drop, and you break out your sweaters and your light jackets, and you might even start a campfire. And then winter rolls in, and what do? We bundle up for warmth, and we stay indoors, and we do our best to fight the cold air. Things feel desolate. Colors give way to gray skies, and then, just when the bitter cold almost seems too much to bear, the green buds of life spring forth in the warm sunlight of spring. Summer, fall, winter, spring, everything moves in concert. Everything comes with this rhythm, one right after the other. And so last week, spring began for us. And you probably missed it because here in Florida, we have different seasons. We follow a different seasonal calendar. Like for us, we've got the season where it's so hot it might as well be summer. Followed by it's so hot my face is literally melting off. Which rolls into, dear God, when is it going to stop being so hot? And then it ends with this intermittent cold snap where our fingers become numb and we wonder why on earth we ever wished for cold weather. And guys, it's just not the same, but if you live here, you've learned to cope with the rhythm of the seasons here in Florida, right? And my point is, guys, just like God designed nature to go through these seasons, to go through these patterns, these rhythms, there are seasons to life. There are seasons to your life. And if you can learn to understand that and to embrace that reality, you'll be much more prepared for the season you're in and also for what comes next. In fact, if you look at Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, we find these words. It says that God has made everything beautiful in its time. Like even the hard times, even the difficult seasons. And where you are, it may be exactly where God wants you to be to bring you to where he's called you to be. Like right now, guys, we are all facing a difficult season. It's true. And we've been stirred up by fear. We've been stirred up by worry and concern over this virus and what it means for our health, what it means for our kids, for our families, for the people that we care about. And some of you right now, many of us, we've been rightfully concerned about the economic impacts that we're going to see as a community, as a nation, as individuals and families. We've been furloughed. We've been laid off. We've seen a loss of income, or right now we're worried about a loss of income that's going to come sometime later. And right now in this moment, guys, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. We're just kind of sitting here waiting for what's going to come next. We're stuck inside waiting for the cold of winter to finally end. That's where we are. But guys, Scripture reminds us that God is making everything beautiful in its time. And we might not be able to see it yet, but his grace is coming. His light, it's still shining. And so as Paul told the Galatian believers again in Galatians 6 verse 9, he says, let us not become weary of doing good. For at the proper time, we're going to reap a harvest. If we don't give up, guys, don't give in. Don't give up. Just keep trusting that God is going to see us through this season that we're in. See, what we need right now is a bird's eye view of this thing. What we need is to be able to step back and just remember that the past 2 weeks, the past month, this year that we're in, it's only one moment in the vast sea of moments of life's memories. It's kind of like looking at the pictures on your phone. Like, I don't know how your phone does it, but my iPhone, it'll show me pictures in varying degrees of time, right? And so I can look at recent photos on my phone, a single moment in time, or I can zoom out. And I can see my life as little specks through the years. And these photos, these moments, while they happen all the time, and each one is big in its own time, when you zoom out, everything you thought was worth documenting in your life that year becomes this tiny little thumbnail all on one screen. It's crazy how the perspective changes when you get this. Because if you could zoom out on your life, like you would see that when you're in a moment, it can often feel like it's never going to end, right? Like, oh, we'll have this time forever, or, oh, they'll always be there, right? Or, in the negative, you think, well, I'm never going to get through this, or this hurts so much. How am I ever going to recover from this? But listen, guys, in the scope of eternity, from the bird's eye view, you can't even see this moment. It's just a tiny little thumbnail in the midst of the greater story. And listen, guys, I get that doesn't change how it feels right now. But it's a good reminder that this too shall pass. And as a pastor, I don't know why God makes us go through some of these seasons or lets us walk through some of these seasons that we go through. I don't have all the answers. I don't know if we're ever going to have all the answers. I don't know if we're meant to have all the answers. And we can speculate about reasons for seasons that we go through until we spin ourselves around, and we may never figure it out. But guys, until the world ends, let's press on as if it intends to keep on spinning, okay? Let's redeem this season for the glory of God, and let's trust that he is still in control. And rather than asking God, why is this happening to me right now? God, why am I walking through the season? Rather than asking God, why? What if we redeem this moment? And in the midst of our fear, in the midst of our pain, we simply ask God, God, what are you teaching me? God, what do you want me to see? Like where are you leading me, God? And how are you stretching me? Stop asking why and start asking what. And if we did that, we just might see God's story advancing in us one season at a time. We go through seasons. It's a part of life, and we see the same thing in the book of Acts. We've been studying the book of Acts as a church all this year. And as the early church fans out into the world, as they keep going further and further out on the mission that God's called them to, we see these moments of tremendous persecution followed by these seasons of peace. And it's sort of like, stretching a rubber band, right? The first time it's kind of tight as you pull it, and then you let it contract. And then you pull it a little more, you can pull it a little further, and it expands even more, and then you let it contract, and then you pull it even further than you did before. And each time you pull it, you expand and contract, you see the rubber band going further and further and further. Sometimes we need to be stretched. And in the same way, the early church went through these many explosions as they experienced hardship and persecution, followed by a season of rest. There was these expansions and contractions as God began to fan them out into the world. Much like we read in Acts chapter 9, verse 31, following the great persecution that Saul brought upon the church, we find these words in Acts 9:31. It says, "Then the church throughout Judea, Galilee, and Samaria, they enjoyed a time of peace and was strengthened, living in the fear of the Lord, and encouraged by the Holy Spirit, it increased in numbers." You see, God has a purpose in every season. And guys, we may not fully understand it, but that doesn't mean he's not moving in our story. Some moments take time. But if we're faithful to trust him in our waiting, we will see his hand at work in our lives and through our story. And we see that truth in the life of Peter. As he continues to do the work that God called him to, he begins to share the gospel with more and more people. And so today, as we kind of gather here across this community, I just want to share two stories in the book of Acts, chapter 9. I just want us to lean into these stories for a moment. I want us to reflect on what God's speaking to us through them. And so Acts chapter 9, verse 32, if you want to follow along with me, we find these words. It says, "As Peter traveled about the country, he went to visit the Lord's people who lived in Lydda. And there he found a man named Aeneas who was paralyzed and had been bedridden for 8 years. 'Aeneas,' Peter said to him, 'Jesus Christ heals you. Get up and roll up your mat.' And immediately Aeneas got up. And all those who lived in Lydda and Sharon saw him and turned to the Lord." And so as we've been saying, time can be tricky, right? It's often relative to our experiences. Sometimes time is flying by, and other times it's like standing still. I'll give you an example. Have you ever been out with friends? Or you've been on a date with someone that you really like, or you finally have some romantic time with your spouse without the kids. And in those moments, you want the time to just keep on going. It never seems like it's long enough, but time is flying by. What's up with that? But then you find yourself in a situation where you're hanging out with people you don't really like, or you're out with friends, but the annoying person happens to be along for the ride, or you go out to a restaurant with your family, and it just seems like the kids are constantly misbehaving and bickering and fighting back and forth, and for some reason, as much as you want that time to end, it just keeps on going. Time just stops. It stands still. It's like an eternity in those moments. Like the things you want to continue don't ever seem to be long enough, and the things you don't just keep on going. Time is so relative, guys. And I guess the reason why I'm saying this is that one of the challenges we face when we read the scriptures is you can read a story like this one in Acts chapter 9 in about 8 seconds and totally miss that this guy spent 8 years crippled on a mat, paralyzed, unable to walk. At what point do you give up hope that you're ever going to walk again? Or that a change is going to happen, or that God's going to show up? I don't know, but 8 years can feel like an eternity when you're just sitting on a mat. If you look at the scriptures, you can read the story of Abraham and Sarah in the book of Genesis in about 15 minutes and totally miss the fact that was 15 years of their life from the moment God promised a son to the moment that God delivered on that promise. 15 years. You can read the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis and totally pass by the fact that it was 17 years that he spent in prison as a slave or as a prisoner in jail. Guys, think about that. Honestly, most of us, we have a hard time handling a bad day. A bad day. Like, I don't want to sound heartless, but we need some biblical perspective here. This man spent 8 years suffering. And listen, often in the Bible, the greatest miracles, they often involve the longest struggle. And the reason Luke includes the length of time this man was crippled was to magnify how great this miracle was as Peter entered into his story. The longer the condition, the greater the miracle. And that's why the Bible's so specific here. And we need to lean into that for a moment. Because here's a mistake many of us make when we're in a circumstance like this. Like our natural inclination is, God, please deliver me. God, I'm feeling pain right now. Please get me out of it as quickly as possible. God, deliver me. Deliver me from whatever circumstance I don't like, or this thing that's disrupting my day or my routine. Deliver me from anything that makes me feel uncomfortable, God. And for many of us, all we can think about is getting out of the circumstance as quickly as possible. We just want to get out of the circumstance instead of discovering what we need to get out of the circumstance. And maybe what we need to pray instead is when we find ourselves here crippled on our mats is God, reveal yourself to me. Reveal yourself to me in this circumstance that I'm going through. Reveal yourself to me. God, let me see more of you because of this struggle that I'm going through in my life. Not deliver me, but reveal yourself to me. Like, consider this. When God came down to rescue the people from the Egyptians in the book of Exodus, the Bible records 10 miraculous signs that God performs. And these weren't small signs. These were massive displays of his power and his might. But you have to wonder, why didn't God just perform one miracle and just seal the deal? Like, why didn't he just give 1 through 9 and just go 10, boom, we're out of here? Like, why didn't that happen? We would have saved time. People wouldn't have suffered so long under Pharaoh and continued in that time. But God tells Moses, he says, Moses, I'm displaying my power. I'm taking my time because I want to reveal more of my glory. God was building up to something more. And guys, maybe the same is true in our lives. Maybe the same is true in our story. Maybe we need to struggle just a little bit longer so that God can reveal just a little bit more glory in us. Guys, 8 years is a long time. Let's get some perspective on this and realize that sometimes we have to go through these seasons so we can really experience the miracle that God wants us to experience. And guys, here's some good news. A promise that we find echoed throughout the scriptures. Listen, no matter how long you struggle, no matter how helpless or hopeless you feel, it is never too late for God to heal you. It's never too late for God to bring his healing into your story, into your life. Like, do we believe that God could change our hearts, that God could change our circumstances, that God could change us in a moment? Like, honestly, do we live with this belief that at any moment God can invade our reality and our lives and heal us from a lifetime of hurt? Do we believe that we can encounter Jesus and that he can make a difference in our hearts and our lives today? Do we believe that? Because I believe we can. And I believe in the power of God to invade our lives. And when he does, people are going to take notice. And they're going to praise his name for what he's done through us. And so again, let's redeem this season. Let's ask God to reveal his glory in and through our lives. Let's keep on reading. Acts chapter 9, verse 36. And so in Joppa, there was a disciple named Tabitha. In Greek, her name is Dorcas. And she was always doing good and helping the poor. And about that time, she became sick and she died. And her body was washed and placed in an upstairs room. Now, Lydda was near Joppa. And so when the disciples heard that Peter was in Lydda, they sent 2 men to him and urged him, please come at once. And so Peter went with them, and when he arrived, he was taken upstairs to the room. And all the widows stood around him, crying and showing him the robes and the other clothing that Dorcas had made while she was still with them. So Luke tells us that Tabitha was a disciple who took care of others. She helped the poor. She was kind. She was generous. And yet she got sick. And she died. What we find is that death doesn't discriminate, does it? You know, you think about our present circumstance. It's been clear from the news reports this sickness, this virus, this disease, that it can strike the wealthy right alongside the poor. Famous people and common people, politicians, healthcare workers, retail clerks, young, old, it doesn't seem to care. We are not immune. Guys, when did we forget that? Like, as human beings, we have a 100% fatality rate. And if it's not this virus that gets us, it'll be something else, guaranteed. I mean, thanks to COVID-19, we have one more way we could go. And if it does nothing else, it should cause us to consider what we're doing with the time we have left. In fact, Psalm 90 verse 12 says, "Teach us to number our days, that we might gain a heart of wisdom." And guys, I think one thing that stands out to me is when Tabitha died in the story, people mourned her deeply because they were touched by her life in such a positive way. They were grieving as they showed Peter clothes that she had made them, that she had given to them, how she had taken such good care of them. And guys, I just wonder in our own lives, what story would people tell about us? Like, when our days are through, how will their grief honor our memory? We should think about that. Teach us to number our days that we might gain a heart of wisdom. And so in verse 40, we find that we kind of end things out. Peter sent them out of the room, and then he got down on his knees and he prayed. And turning toward the dead woman, he said, "Tabitha, get up." She opened her eyes, and seeing Peter, she sat up. He took her by the hand and helped her to her feet. And then he called for the believers, especially the widows, and he presented her to them alive. And this became known all over Joppa, and many people believed in the Lord. Guys, if this story speaks nothing else, may it remind us that it's never too late for our God to move. Our God is not finished, even when the world has given up hope. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life." And I believe that when we put our hope in Jesus, that he brings us to life, that he restores our dreams, that he heals our brokenness, that he speaks faith to our doubts, and he speaks joy to our discouragement. He brings peace in our waiting. He redeems our seasons as we focus our hearts on him. Jesus is the resurrection and the life. It's not just what he does, it's who he is. And so even though we walk through this difficult season, even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I know that he is with us and that he's going to see us through this. He's going to restore us. He's going to bring us back to life. And so guys, I don't know about you, but I think one of my favorite places to visit is the mountains. I love going to the mountains. Something about the mountains just captures my heart. It captures that adventurous spirit within me. Mountains just feel like something you can conquer, something you can stand on top of and just feel like you're on top of the world. And every time I've come to the top of a mountain, I've had this really cool worship experience. It feels like I'm just right there connected to God in those moments. And in the same way, there have been some really incredible moments captured in the scripture of people up on top of the mountain. You think about Moses on the top of Mount Sinai. You think about Elijah up on Mount Horeb. You think about the disciples as they saw Jesus transfigured before their eyes on top of the mountain. These really cool mountaintop experiences. But guys, for every mountaintop experience that I've had, I've learned you've got to come back down. And the shadow of any great mountain is this valley that you have to walk through. And guys, right now, we don't like walking through valleys. We want the pasture that's green and fertile. We want the mountaintop experience where we're close to God. We want to feel that presence all around us. But guys, in your life, in your experience, do you want to know where you grow the most? It's not going to be on top of a mountain. Instead, the greatest growth occurs as we walk through the valley. When we pass through the crucible, when we go through pain, when we endure hardship, when we go through the fire, God's able to mold us and to shape us into who he's called us to be. The greatest growth of the soul happens through the valley. That's where the growth is. That's why it's always greenest in the valley. So this month, as we isolate and quarantine and maintain proper social distancing, guys, maybe the season isn't so bad. Like maybe God has a purpose in all of this, and maybe you can learn to embrace him even when times are hard and respond with just simple trust and obedience. And maybe what we can say to God is, God, I want you to redeem this season. that I'm going through. God, I'm going to wait on you to restore my brokenness and to revive my circumstance. And until you do, God, here's my heart. Here's my life. Even now, I'm going to trust you to see me through this path that I'm walking, this valley that I'm walking through. Guys, I love you. And God bless you. And even though we are scattered all over the place, may we continue to move with God, to move people to life. Amen? You guys have a great week.